The diplomatic station Kestrel spire hung above the gas giant like a thin blade of light, beautiful from far away, cruel up close. Inside, the air smelled like polished stone and cold metal. Every corridor had been built to impress visitors who were not human. The ceilings were high for tall species. The lights were soft for sensitive eyes. The temperature was tuned to keep cold-blooded delegates comfortable. Humans wore jackets. They always wore jackets. Ambassador Mara Vance stood in the outer chamber and watched the main hall through a wall of clear crystal. Beyond it, the council ring curved like a crown around a void. 12 thrones floated in a circle, each shaped to the body of its species. Some were carved from meteor iron, some grown from living coral, some woven from light. The human seat sat at the edge. Not a throne, not even a chair, really. A plain platform with a narrow rail. A reminder, you are here because we allow it. Mara's hands were clasped behind her back. Her face was calm. Her breath was steady. Her eyes didn't wander. Patience had a posture. Behind her, Lieutenant Jalen Rowe, security liaison, shifted his weight and lowered his voice. They moved the human dais again, he said. Mara didn't turn. How far is this time? 2 steps farther from the central arc. Of course. Jalen's jaw tightened. It's a childish insult. It's a test, Mara corrected quietly. Everything here is a test. A chime pulsed through the chamber. The sound was not a bell, not a tone, but a pressure change that made every eardrum notice it. An attendant drone drifted near the door, silver and silent. The council session was beginning. Mara walked in. Every species had a way of showing dominance. Some inflated their bodies. Some flashed colors. Some released pheromones that made weaker minds dizzy. The Council of the Hegemony Accord preferred something simpler. They made you wait. The thrones were already occupied. The delegates were already speaking, low, layered voices across dozens of frequencies. The translators caught the words and fed them into Mara's ear as smooth, polite language. But the emotion under it was not polite. The Vayari consul reclined in her coil chair like a queen on a snake of velvet. The Gorath warlord's plated shoulders scraped his throne when he shifted. The Seln archivist didn't sit at all. It hovered in a lattice of pale light, as if gravity was optional when knowledge was old enough. No one looked at Mara when she entered. That was the point. She crossed the hall alone. Her footsteps were too loud on the polished floor. When she reached the human dais, she did not hesitate. She stepped onto it. She stood straight. She waited. For 37 breaths, the council ignored her. Then the central air shimmered, and the speaker of the ring manifested, a featureless humanoid figure made from projected light. Its voice was blended from every member species, an artificial neutrality designed to sound fair. Ambassador Mara Vance of the Terran Union, the speaker said at last. Your presence is acknowledged. Acknowledged. Not welcomed. Mara inclined her head. Thank you, speaker. The Vayari consul finally turned her narrow eyes toward Mara's platform. A faint smile pulled at the edges of her mouth, like she had tasted something bitter and decided she liked it. Humans arrive early, the consul said. Eager. Mara kept her expression still. Punctual. A soft ripple of amusement moved through the hall. The Gorath warlord tapped one heavy claw against his throne. The sound echoed like a hammer. The session is about Karen Belt shipping routes, he growled. Why is the human here? The Seln archivist answered without looking. Because the Karen Belt intersects Terran trade corridors. Because the Terrans petitioned for protection. Because their convoys continue to be delayed. Delayed was a gentle word. It meant hijacked. It meant boarded. It meant civilians pulled from their ships and searched like criminals. Mara spoke carefully. We petitioned because 3 humanitarian vessels were intercepted in Accord space. Medical supplies were confiscated. Refugees were detained without charge. The Vayari consul tilted her head. And were the supplies approved by the proper channels? They were marked for relief, Mara said. With full manifestations. The consul's smile widened. So eager to help. So emotional. Mara heard Jalen shift behind her. She felt his anger like heat, even without looking. The speaker raised a glowing hand. Order. The matter has been reviewed. The Karen Belt will be classified as a restricted corridor until further notice. Access will require council clearance. Mara's stomach dropped. Her face did not change. Restricted? She repeated. That corridor is how our outer colonies receive food shipments. Clearance delays will cost lives. The speaker's voice remained smooth. The Council has determined that unauthorized Terran movement through the belt represents a potential destabilization risk. The words were clean. The meaning was not. They were cutting humanity off slowly, piece by piece, while pretending it was policy. Mara inhaled through her nose and spoke like a surgeon making an incision. What destabilization risk? The Gorith warlord leaned forward. Plates shifted. His eyes were dark pits. Your growth, he said simply. Your ships. Your engines. Your habits. Our habits. Mara asked. You build, the warlord said, as if the word itself was an insult. Faster than anyone should. You adapt. You learn from loss. And you do not stop. The council ring-hummed with agreement. Even the silent species seemed to press closer. Mara understood then, as she had understood for months, for years, but never with such clarity. They were not afraid of human aggression. They were afraid of human progress. The Seln archivist spoke, voice cold as vacuum. Terrans were granted provisional membership because you presented yourselves as cooperative, peaceful, grateful for inclusion. Mara's eyes stayed fixed on the speaker. We are cooperative. We are peaceful. The archivist's lights flickered. You are patient. A pause. A heavy one. Patience, in this hall, was not praise. It was an accusation. The Vayari consul's voice softened into something almost kind. Ambassador Vance, understand. The Accord is old. Stability is fragile. We cannot permit a young species to move freely with technologies we have not fully evaluated. Mara nodded slowly. We have shared our technology openly. Yes, the consul said, and her smile returned. And that was unwise. The insult was gentle. That made it sharper. Mara felt the moment when Jalen almost spoke. She lifted 2 fingers behind her back, a silent signal. Not now. Not here. She focused on the central issue. If you restrict the Karen belt, at least allow humanitarian exemptions. The speaker's head tilted. Such requests may be filed. Processing time will be assessed. How long? Mara asked. The speaker did not answer. The silence was the answer. Mara's pulse rose. She kept her voice steady. Speaker, with respect, delayed relief becomes denial. We are asking for a simple guarantee. Medical convoys will pass. The Gorith warlord snorted. You ask for guarantees as if you can demand them. Mara turned her eyes to him for the first time. Not anger. Not pride. Just attention. We are not demanding, she said. We are warning you of consequences. Starvation, disease, unrest. The warlord's lips pulled back. In your colonies. In the belt, Mara corrected. In every port your restricted corridor touches. Humans are not the only ones who rely on those routes. The Vayari consul waved a hand, as if brushing away a fly. Then perhaps your colonies should have been placed in more suitable regions. You expanded quickly, recklessly. Mara held the words that wanted to come out. The human part that wanted to say, we expanded because we had to. Because your suitable regions were locked behind tariffs and evaluations and endless delays. Instead, she did what humans had done since the day they reached the stars. She swallowed pride and offered calm. The Terran Union is willing to negotiate additional inspections, Mara said. Joint escorts. Transparency. Whatever is needed to reassure the Council. The Seln archivist finally faced her, lights narrowing. Reassure us. A faint tremor passed through Mara's chest. Not fear. Not a weakness. Exhaustion. Humanity had offered everything. Data. Trust. Access. Aid. They had never once threatened this Council. They had never once used the weapons they carried. They had been patient. And patience, she realized, was being treated like permission. The speaker raised its hand again. The decision is made. The Karen Belt restriction will take effect immediately. Terran convoys currently en route will be detained for inspection. Mara's mind went cold. Currently en route, she repeated. Her earpiece pinged softly at the same time. An encrypted signal from her aid team outside the chamber. A single line of text flashed on her wrist display. Union Relief Fleet 7. Entering Karen approach. ETA, 42 minutes. Relief Fleet 7. 3 ships. Medical bays full. Cargo is stacked with vaccines and water filters. Refugees aboard. Families pulled from a shattered moon after a mining station accident. They would arrive in the belt in 42 minutes. And the Council had just said they would be detained. Inspected. Delayed. Mara felt something in her chest stretch tight like a cable under strain. She spoke carefully, because her voice now was not just hers. Speaker, I must formally object. Relief Fleet 7 carries civilians and time-sensitive medical cargo. I request immediate clearance. The Vayari consul's eyes gleamed. Oh, a human emergency. It's not political, Mara said. It's medicine. The council will decide, the speaker replied. Mara's fingers curled slightly. She forced them open again. Speaker, she said, and the quiet in her voice made the room hush despite itself. If you delay that fleet, people will die. The Gorath warlord leaned back and spread his claws. Then perhaps your people should learn patience as well. Laughter rippled. Not everyone. Not the Selm. Not the silent species. But enough. Mara watched their faces and felt something settle into place. This was not a misunderstanding. Not a bureaucratic mistake. They had been waiting for this moment. To see what humans would do when pressed. To see if the species that always negotiated would finally snap. Mara met the speaker's blank face. Terran Union has complied with every accord demand for 27 cycles, she said. We have accepted unequal tariffs. We have endured attacks labeled piracy that you refuse to investigate. We have watched our colonies strangled by policy. We have been patient. The word landed like a stone. The Vayari consul's smile thinned. Yes, you have. Mara's mouth was dry. And we are still patient. For a heartbeat, the hall was silent. Then the speaker said, your statement is noted. Clearance request denied pending review. Denied. Pending review. A polite way to kill people without pulling a trigger. Jalen's hand twitched behind her. Mara didn't look. She didn't need to. She could feel his fury like thunder. Mara stood very still. She could do what humans always did. Submit. Negotiate. Wait. Or she could do something else. She remembered the training they gave human diplomats now. It wasn't about speeches. It was about containment. About keeping the species from doing what it could do when fear and grief overwhelmed restraint. In the Union's diplomatic handbook, a line was printed in bold at the start of every chapter. Patience is a weapon. Do not let others mistake it for surrender. She looked around the council ring. 12 thrones. 12 species that believed history was theirs to control. They had never met a species like humanity, not truly. Because humanity's worst impulses were not what made it dangerous. It was the opposite. It was the part of them that could endure pain longer than anyone else. And keep smiling. Mara exhaled slowly. She bowed her head. If anyone thought it was submission, they were wrong. It was a ritual. A pause before a storm. Then I will file the proper request, she said softly. The Vayari consul's smile returned, satisfied. Good. You are learning. Mara stepped down from the human platform and walked out without another word. Behind the crystal doors, the chamber noise resumed. The council moved on immediately, like she had been a minor agenda item. Outside, in the corridor, the air felt colder. Jalen followed close, voice low and sharp. They're going to hold that fleet. Mara's gaze stayed forward. Yes. People will die. Mara's fingers brushed the edge of her wrist display. The message still glowed there like a countdown. 40 minutes now. She passed a window that showed the stars, clean, distant, indifferent. Beyond the station's shields, ships slid through the void like silent thoughts. Mara stopped. Jalen nearly bumped into her. She turned to him finally, and her eyes were not angry. They were tired. Jalen, she said, do you remember what the Admiralty told us before they sent us here? He swallowed. They said, he hesitated, as if speaking it out loud would make it real. Mara finished it for him. They said the council will push until it finds our line, because they do not believe we have one. Jalen's voice was rough. Do we? Mara looked back toward the doors of the council chamber, where the laughter still echoed faintly. Her wrist display pinged again. Another update. Relief Fleet 7. Course confirmed. No escort authorization. No escort. No protection. Just 3 ships heading into a corridor now controlled by people who had decided human lives were negotiable. Mara's face remained calm, but something behind her eyes shifted. A door closing. A long-held breath finally released. Yes, she said quietly. We have a line. Jalen's throat moved. And what happens when they cross it? Mara didn't answer right away, because at that moment, she heard something else. Not from her earpiece. Not from her wrist display. From deep inside her memory. An old phrase spoken by an old commander during the first human expansion wars, back when humanity still believed survival required cruelty. A phrase the Union promised it would never need again. Mara stared at the stars, and for the first time since arriving at Kestrel Spire, she felt the weight of what was coming. When patience ended, it wouldn't be loud at first. It would be silent, because humans didn't explode like unstable reactors. They moved like a blade, the quiet kind. She turned and began walking fast. "Where are we going?" Jalen asked. "To the comm vault," Mara said. "What are you going to do?" Mara didn't slow. "I'm going to send a message," she said. Jalen's eyes widened. "To who?" "The Union?" Mara's voice was steady, almost gentle. "To everyone." They reached the corridor bend where the diplomatic wing met the station's deeper infrastructure. Security drones drifted overhead. A pair of non-human guards watched her with mild curiosity. Humans were never a threat here. Mara didn't look at them. She just kept moving. Because she wasn't thinking about the guards. She was thinking about Relief Fleet 7. About refugees holding their children. About medtechs preparing syringes that might never be used in time. About a council that had just decided those lives were bargaining chips. She pressed her palm to the vault access plate. The system scanned her biometrics. A green light blinked. The door opened. Cold air spilled out like breath from a freezer. Inside was a room of servers and black glass terminals, each one capable of broadcasting on council channels. Jalen stepped in behind her and closed the door. "Mara," he said carefully, "if you do this wrong, they'll arrest you." Mara walked to the terminal and placed both hands on the interface. Her fingers hovered. Her heart did not race. It beat slow and steady, like a clock. She looked at the screen where the council broadcast options floated: public, private, emergency, archival. She selected public. She selected universal translation. She selected all Accord systems. Jalen's breath caught. That's everyone." Mara nodded once. Outside the station, the stars did not change. Inside, something did. Mara opened a blank message field. And for a moment, she did not type. She simply listened. To the silence of a room built for secrets. To the distant hum of a station that believed it was safe. To the ticking countdown on her wrist. 36 minutes. Humanity's patience has been long. Legendary, even. Now the universe was about to learn what patience had been hiding. Mara began to write. And the first words she typed were not angry. They were not violent. They were not a threat. They were a fact. A warning written as plainly as possible so no one could pretend they misunderstood later. Because humans were very careful about one thing. They made sure history could not lie about what happened next. Mara typed, "This is the Terran Union. We have complied. We have endured. We have asked. We have waited." She paused, then added the next line. "Relief Fleet 7 must pass." Her finger hovered over send. Jalen whispered, "Mara, once you hit that, there's no going back." Mara stared at the button, at the clean, simple shape of it, at the enormous consequences behind it. Then she remembered the council's laughter. She remembered the word restricted. She remembered denied pending review. She thought of the refugees who had no throne, no voice, no platform. And she pressed send. The message vanished into the network. A heartbeat later, her wrist display chimed. Not an update. An incoming signal. Priority level, black. There were only a few codes in the Union that used black. They were not for diplomacy. They were for endings. Mara's eyes narrowed as she opened it. A single sentence filled the screen. Authorization request received. Standing by. Jalen stared at it, face pale. "What did you just trigger?" Mara's voice was quiet. "The part they never believed existed," she said. Outside the station, far beyond the council ring's polished cruelty, 3 small ships carried medicine through the dark. And somewhere even farther away, something ancient and human began to wake up. Not rage. Not hatred. Just a final, exhausted decision. 35 minutes. Mara looked up at the comm vault ceiling, as if she could see the stars through it. And she whispered the last thing the galaxy would hear before the universe went silent. Let them make their choice. The message rippled outward faster than any ship could travel. Across Accord space, translators woke from idle cycles. Comms relays that usually carried trade data and ceremonial speeches suddenly prioritized a single Terran transmission. It appeared on civilian terminals, military bridges, and council archives alike. Clean, unembellished, impossible to ignore. This is the Terran Union. We have complied. We have endured. We have asked. We have waited. No threats. No accusations. Just a record. On Kestrel Spire, The council felt the shift before anyone spoke. The speaker of the ring flickered, its composite light briefly destabilizing as priority alerts stacked faster than it could process. Several delegates straightened in their thrones. Others bristled, annoyed. The Vayari consul's smile faded by a fraction. That message was unauthorized, she said sharply. Silence the human channel. The speaker paused, an imperceptible delay, but enough. Council override required, it replied. The Gorath warlord snarled. Then override it. Before the speaker could respond, a second Terran message propagated. This one not broadcast, but registered. Filed. Stamped. Archived. Time-coded across every Accord system. Human bureaucracy was very good at that. The Seln archivist's lattice brightened. It leaned closer, attention sharpened. They are not pleading, it said. They are documenting. The word hung in the air. Documenting was what species did before wars, tribunals, or collapses. It meant the moment mattered enough to preserve. The speaker finally spoke. Terran broadcast acknowledged. No immediate action required. The Vayari consul's eyes narrowed. You hesitate. I calculate. The speaker replied evenly. On the far edge of the ring, a delegate few noticed. A minor trade species with little military power shifted uneasily. Its voice trembled when it spoke. Speaker, the Terrans invoked no hostile clauses. No, the speaker agreed. They did not. Silence followed. That was worse. Far from Kestrel Spire, Relief Fleet 7 cut through the void on a steady vector. The three ships flew in close formation, hulls marked with medical sigils recognized by every major species. On the lead vessel, UNS Solace, Captain Elena Iqbal stood on the bridge with her hands folded behind her back, mirroring a posture she had learned long ago. Patience had a posture. Her crew moved quietly. They always did relief runs. Loud voices didn't help dying people. ETA to Karen checkpoint? She asked. 29 minutes, the navigator replied. No escort pings. No hails. Elena nodded once. Maintain course. The Solace's med bays were full. Doctors floated between beds and mag boots, checking vitals, murmuring reassurance. Children slept clutching thermal blankets. An elderly miner coughed softly, lungs scarred by dust and vacuum exposure. They trusted the sigils on the hull. They trusted the Union. Elena trusted the math. But the math was changing. Captain, the comms officer said carefully. We're picking up passive scans ahead. Multiple sources. Elena's eyes flicked to the tactical display. Accord patrols? Looks like it. But heavier than standard inspection craft. Elena felt the familiar tightening in her chest. Not fear, anticipation. Their positioning, the tactical officer added. Box formation. Intercept trajectory. Elena exhaled slowly. Open a channel. The comms officer hesitated. Captain, we don't have clearance. Elena's voice remained calm. Open it anyway. The channel opened. Static resolved into a layered alien voice, clipped and formal. Terran vessels. You are entering restricted Accord space. Reduce speed and prepare for inspection. Elena leaned forward slightly. This is Relief Fleet 7, operating under humanitarian protocols. We request immediate passage. A pause. Longer than necessary. Request denied pending review. The words hit like cold water. Elena closed her eyes for half a second. Inspection delays will result in civilian casualties, she said. You have our manifests. Our routes. Our history. Another pause. Your species does not dictate procedure. Elena straightened. No, she said. But we do dictate how much blood ends up on it. Silence answered her. The channel closed. Around her, the bridge crew waited. No one panicked. No one shouted. They had trained for this too. Slow to half, Elena ordered. Keep formation. No sudden maneuvers. The Solace's engines adjusted, their hum deepening. 24 minutes. Back on Kestrel Spire, Ambassador Mara Vance stood alone in the comm vault, watching data scroll faster than any human could read. Jalen hovered near the door, restless. They're intercepting the fleet. I know, Mara said. How can you be so calm? Mara didn't answer immediately. She watched the network instead, watching who saw the message, how fast it propagated, which systems logged it without filtering. Patterns mattered. Finally, she said, because calm is honest. Panic would be performative. Jalen frowned. And this, what we just did, wasn't. Mara turned to him then, eyes sharp. No, This was procedural. She tapped the terminal, pulling up a second interface, one she had hoped never to use. It required dual authorization. Her biometrics alone weren't enough. A prompt blinked. Secondary confirmation required. Mara pressed her thumb to the pad. It rejected her. Jalen stared. You need another signatory. Yes. And you don't have one. Mara's mouth curved faintly. Not in this room. Her wrist display chimed again. Incoming, secure, compressed, routed through half a dozen dead relays. She opened it. A live feed resolved. A dimly lit chamber, metal walls scarred by old impacts. A man sat at a plain table, uniform unadorned except for a single insignia on his collar. Fleet Admiral Rhea Calder looked older than Mara remembered. Not frail, weathered. Ambassador, Calder said. You're early. Mara inclined her head. We ran out of time. Calder's eyes flicked sideways, reading data only she could see. I was hoping you'd say that. Jalen froze. You were hoping? Calder looked straight through the camera. Because if you hadn't called, it would mean one of two things. Either the council backed down, or you did. Mara said nothing. Calder leaned back. Which is it? They're holding Relief Fleet 7, Mara replied. Inspection delay. No escort. Calder's jaw tightened. Of course they are. They crossed the line, Mara said quietly. Calder exhaled. Yes, they did. A beat. Then Calder asked. Are you requesting authorization? Mara didn't hesitate. Yes. Jalen's heart pounded loud enough, he was sure they could hear it. Calder studied Mara's face for a long moment. Not judging, measuring. Once I confirm, Calder said, this stops being a diplomatic problem. Mara nodded. It already is. Calder's mouth twitched. You always did have timing. Her fingers moved out of frame. A code transmitted. The terminal chimed. Secondary confirmation accepted. The interface is unlocked. Jalen whispered. What did you just authorize? Mara's eyes never left the screen. A reminder. In deep space, far beyond Accord sensor nets, a region of darkness folded in on itself. It wasn't a jump. It wasn't a warp. It was something humans had invented when they realized the universe had rules, but also loopholes. The darkness unfolded. Something emerged. Not a fleet. One ship. Long, angular, matte black, its hull absorbing starlight rather than reflecting it. No running lights. No transponder. To most sensors, it barely existed. To the few that could see it, it looked wrong, like a concept the universe hadn't agreed to yet. Inside the vessel, the lights were low. The bridge was quiet. At the center console stood a human woman with steel-gray hair pulled tight, eyes fixed on the forward display. Position? She asked. Shadowing Karen perimeter, her navigator replied. We are unseen. Good. The woman's name was Commander Tamsin Holt. Her ship was designated UNS Quietus. It was not listed in any Accord registry. It had never been used in anger. Until now. Any word from Fleet? Holt asked. Authorization confirmed, the comms officer said. Rules of engagement remain selective. Holt nodded. They always are. On the display, faint outlines resolved. Accord patrol ships forming a net around 3 small Terran vessels. Holt's fingers tightened on the rail. Magnify, she said. The solace filled the screen. Holt could see the medical markings, the external med pods, the minimal armament. She recognized that ship class. She had escorted them before, back when escorts were still allowed. Scan the patrols, Holt ordered. Mixed composition. Gorith hulls. Vayari command signatures. Heavy inspection rigs. Holt's mouth hardened. They brought claws to a bandage. She tapped her earpiece. All hands. This is not an engagement unless I say it is. We are here to observe. A pause. Then, quietly. And to remember. At the Karen checkpoint, the patrol ships closed in. Captain Elena Iqbal watched the tactical display, heart steady. Captain, her first officer said, they're extending boarding arms. Elena nodded. Understood. She keyed the internal channel. All medical staff, brace for delay. Maintain care schedules. No panic. A chorus of calm acknowledgments answered. Elena switched back to external comms. Accord Patrol, this is Captain Iqbal. I formally protest this action under humanitarian law. No response. The patrol ships loomed closer, their hulls bristling with equipment meant to cut, pry, and control. On one of the patrol bridges, a junior officer hesitated. Commander, these ships are marked relief. The Vayari commander's voice was cool. So are many things, until proven otherwise. But the scans. Proceed. The boarding arm extended. At that exact moment, every sensor on every patrol ship screamed. Not an alarm. A question. Unknown mass. Unknown vector. Unknown physics. The junior officer's eyes went wide. Commander, there's something. The Vayari commander turned. The Quietus slipped out of the shadows. It did not fire. It did not speak. It simply existed between the patrol ships and the relief fleet, close enough that the patrol sensors overloaded trying to resolve it. On the Solace's bridge, the tactical officer gasped. Captain, unidentified contact. Human design. Elena's breath caught. Human. Yes, ma'am. But this class isn't in our database. Elena stared at the display. Between her ship and the patrols stood a human vessel unlike any she had ever seen. Silent. Still. Waiting. A channel opened. Not to the patrols. To the relief fleet. Commander Holt's voice came through, low and clear. Relief Fleet 7, she said. This is UNS Quietus. Elena swallowed. Quietus? We didn't request an escort. You didn't need to, Holt replied. On the patrol bridge, panic spread. Commander, that ship, it's the Terran military. Identify yourself, the Vayari commander barked into the channel. The Quietus did not answer. It didn't need to. Its presence was the answer. Back on Kestrel Spire, the council ring erupted in overlapping voices as alerts flooded in. The speaker struggled to maintain order. The Seln archivist spoke first, voice stripped of pretense. That vessel, that technology, the Terrans did not disclose this. The Gorath warlord growled. They deceived us. No, the archivist said. They withheld. The Vayari consul stood slowly, color draining from her face. Speaker, she said, order the patrols to disengage. The speaker hesitated. For the first time in its long existence, it hesitated because it did not know the outcome. On the Quietus, Holt watched the patrol ships begin to drift, backing away, unsure whether movement would provoke something worse. She exhaled slowly. Escort position, she ordered. Minimal visibility. No weapons lock. The Quietus slid closer to the Solace, a silent guardian. Elena felt tears sting her eyes, not from fear, but relief. Thank you, she whispered into the channel. Holt's reply was quiet. Get your people home. As Relief Fleet 7 resumed course, slipping past the retreating patrols, the universe seemed to hold its breath. On Kestrel Spire, Ambassador Mara Vance closed her eyes. Not in triumph. In resignation. Because this was still restrained. This was humanity choosing the smallest possible action to correct a lethal injustice. And the council was already afraid. Mara opened her eyes and looked at the data pouring in, at the archived messages, the sensor logs, the recorded retreat. History was being written carefully, patiently, but patience had shifted shape, and everyone could feel it. The relief fleet passed through the Karen belt under escort that technically did not exist. No formal declaration was made. No treaty was amended. No apology was issued. Officially, the incident was logged as a temporary sensor anomaly followed by a voluntary patrol repositioning. Unofficially, something fundamental cracked. Across Accord space, analysts replayed the data again and again. They slowed it down, enhanced it, ran simulations until their processors overheated. The results never changed. The human vessel had appeared inside a controlled perimeter without triggering early warning arrays. It had mass, power output, and gravitational influence that violated accepted limits. Yet it behaved as if those limits were irrelevant. And most disturbing of all, it had not attacked. That fact unsettled more than any weapon ever could. On Kestrel Spire, the council chamber was sealed for an emergency session. This time, no one made the human wait. Ambassador Mara Vance stood on her narrow platform while the thrones filled faster than protocol allowed. Voices overlapped. Colors flared. The speaker of the ring struggled to assert coherence. Order, it intoned. Order is required. The Gorath warlord struck his throne with both claws. The Terrans violated Accord's sovereignty. Mara did not raise her voice. She did not need to. They escorted a humanitarian fleet, she said. Through a corridor you had no legal authority to close. The Vayari consul rounded on her. You deployed undeclared military assets in response to a lawful inspection. Mara met her gaze. An inspection designed to delay medical aid until civilians die is not lawful. It is strategic negligence. The word negligence landed hard. The Seln archivist's lattice flared bright white. Ambassador Vance, it said, your species concealed military capabilities far beyond your disclosed limits. Yes, Mara said. The chamber stilled. Yes, the archivist repeated. You admit deception? Mara shook her head slowly. No, we admit restraint. A ripple of confusion moved through the ring. The archivist processed for a long moment. Explain. Mara clasped her hands behind her back. From the moment humanity joined the Accord, we understood something you did not. You assumed transparency was proof of trust. We knew it was leverage. The Gorath warlord snarled. You speak as if this is clever. It is survival, Mara replied evenly. We shared what we could afford to lose. The Vayari consul's voice sharpened. And what else have you withheld? Mara did not answer immediately. She looked around the ring, at the ancient powers, the younger opportunists, the silent observers who had benefited quietly from human patience. What we have withheld, she said at last, is not the question you should be asking. The speaker's light pulsed. Then what is? Mara's eyes hardened. Why? She said. Did you believe we would never stop withholding? Far from the council, the UNS Quietus drifted in deep shadow, engines idling in a state that was neither active nor dormant. Commander Tamsin Holt stood alone in the observation alcove, staring at a holographic replay of the escort maneuver. The Solace slid past the patrol ships again and again in looping silence. Perfect geometry, perfect timing, perfect restraint. A junior officer approached hesitantly. Commander, Fleet Command requests a status report. Holt didn't turn. They already have it. Yes, ma'am, but he swallowed. They want to know if the council escalates, how quickly we can respond. Holt finally looked at him. How quickly, she echoed. Yes. She considered the question carefully. We already did, she said. They just didn't notice. The officer frowned. Ma'am. Holt gestured to the replay. That escort wasn't about protecting the relief fleet. It was about data. She tapped the display. New overlays appeared, sensor sweeps, reaction times, power fluctuations from the patrol ships. They showed us how they think, Holt continued. How they panic. What they prioritize. What they're afraid of. The officer's eyes widened. So this was reconnaissance. Holt nodded. Of the most honest kind. She shut down the replay. And now, she said quietly, they're going to overreact. They did. Within 2 cycles, Accord space began to change. Human trade inspections increased tenfold. Data audits were demanded retroactively. Joint research projects were paused pending review. Military observers were reassigned to human-adjacent systems under the guise of transparency initiatives. To the Council, these were pressure tactics. To humanity, they were confirmation. On Earth, in the Union's central chamber carved beneath old continental rock, Admiral Rhea Calder stood before a wall of projections. Supply routes blinked amber. Diplomatic channels glowed red. Civilian sentiment metrics crept upward in a way Calder did not like. Anger without direction was dangerous. She turned to the assembled commanders. Status. A strategist spoke first. Accord pressure is uneven. They're probing for fractures, colonies with slower response times, mixed populations, weaker defenses. Calder nodded. They're testing patience. Another officer leaned forward. We can't keep responding surgically. At some point, they'll provoke something we can't contain quietly. Calder's eyes flicked to a smaller display in the corner, an image of the Quietus. That point isn't now, she said. And it won't be loud. A younger admiral frowned. With respect, ma'am, how long do we keep absorbing this? Calder's voice was calm. Until they make the next mistake. The admiral hesitated. And if they don't? Calder looked at him. They will. The mistake came from an unexpected direction. Not from a warlord. Not from a consul. From an ally. The Thaurex Combine had always been neutral-friendly with humanity. Shared trade routes. Shared research. Shared border stations. When the Combine announced a temporary suspension of joint defense agreements with the Terran Union, citing uncertainty regarding human strategic intentions, the galaxy took notice. On Kestrel Spire, the news broke during another council session. The Vayari consul spoke with thinly veiled satisfaction. It appears even your partners are reconsidering your unpredictability. Mara felt the weight of it immediately. The Thalrex border housed 3 mixed population stations, including Station Havenfall. She activated her wrist display discreetly. A new message blinked in. Havenfall traffic spike detected. Non-accord vessels approaching. Pirates. Or privateers. The line between the two had always been flexible, especially when someone else was willing to look away. Mara's voice remained steady. The Thalrex suspension creates a security vacuum. We request temporary human patrol authorization to protect Havenfall. The speaker hesitated. The Gorath warlord laughed. So eager to deploy again. The Seln archivist's lights flickered. The request has merit. The Vayari consul cut in sharply. Denied. If the Thalrex withdraws protection, the station is their responsibility. Mara's pulse thudded. Havenfall is a civilian hub, she said. Human, Thalrex, and non-aligned populations. And now, the consul replied coolly, it is a lesson. The words were barely translated before Mara understood them. A lesson. For humanity. For patience. Mara bowed her head. Then you are knowingly allowing an attack on a civilian station, she said. Record that. The speaker's light pulsed. Statement recorded. Mara turned and walked out. This time, no one laughed. Havenfall Station orbited a dim red dwarf, its structure a patchwork of human modular design and Thalrex bioarchitecture. Markets, habitation rings, and transit spines spiraled outward like a mechanical flower. When the first pirate ships emerged from drift space, the station's sensors screamed. They weren't subtle. 6 vessels. Armed. Transponders spoofed, but recognizable to anyone who bothered to look. Inside the station, alarms wailed. Civilians flooded corridors. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. On the command deck, Station Director Lien Park stared at the tactical display, hands shaking. Any response? She demanded. Her ops officer swallowed. No Accord patrols within range. Thalrex assets have withdrawn. And the Union? The officer hesitated. No authorization. Lien closed her eyes. Then we hold, she said. Evacuate the inner rings. Seal the docks. Outside, the pirate ships spread out, weapons warming. They did not open fire immediately. They waited. Because they knew. Somewhere far away, the council was watching. On the UNS Quietus, Commander Holt watched Havenfall's telemetry bloom across her console. Unauthorized hostile presence, her AI reported. Projected civilian casualty curve, severe. Holt's jaw clenched. Fleet Command, she asked. Standing orders unchanged. The comms officer replied carefully. Observe. Do not engage without authorization. Holt stared at the station schematic. At the civilian sections. At the mixed species habitats. At the pirates drifting just outside weapon range, savoring the moment. She exhaled slowly. Adjust our vector, she said. The officer froze. Ma'am, that would put us within passive observation range, Holt finished. No weapons lock. The Quietus slid closer, unseen. On Havenfall, a pirate captain smirked at his display. They're scared. Start with the outer docks. A missile launched. It never arrived. Space bent. The missile vanished, simply ceased to exist, caught in a localized distortion no sensor could explain. Every ship froze. On the pirate bridge, chaos erupted. What was that? Another missile launched. Gone. A third. Gone. Then a voice filled every channel simultaneously. Not loud. Not angry. Humans. This is the Terran Union, it said. Step away from the station. The pirate captain's blood ran cold. That's not Accord protocol. Correct, the voice replied. It's humanitarian law. The pirates tried to flee. They couldn't. Their drive stalled. Not disabled, not destroyed, just paused. The Quietus slid into visibility. This time, it did not hide. On Kestrel Spire, alarms erupted as sensors across multiple systems lit up. The speaker's voice cut through the chaos. Terran military vessels detected engaging hostiles without council authorization. The Vayari consul surged to her feet. This is exactly what we warned. Maravant stood. Her voice cut through the chamber like a blade through silk. You denied protection, she said. You watched civilians placed in danger. Humanity did not escalate. She met the consul's eyes. We intervened. On Havenfall, the pirate ships drifted powerless, trapped in silent surrender. No explosions. No debris. No dead. Just 6 vessels waiting to be taken. Commander Holt watched the station stabilize. Civilian casualty projections dropped to zero. She closed her eyes for one brief moment. Then she opened a channel. Ambassador Vance, she said. Mara's wrist chimed. Yes, Mara replied. Holt's voice was steady, but beneath it was iron. We held the line. Mara looked around the council ring, at the fear now openly written across ancient faces. Yes, she said softly. And now, Holt continued, they know where it is. The council chamber fell silent. Not because of protocol, because every species present understood the same terrifying truth. Humanity had not lashed out. It had not been conquered. It had simply refused to allow cruelty when it had the power to stop it. And that was far more dangerous than rage. Because restraint, once proven optional, became a choice. And humanity was clearly running out of reasons to keep choosing it. The galaxy did not panic. That was the first mistake. Instead, it rationalized. On Kestrel Spire, emergency lights dimmed to a neutral glow as the Council did what it had always done when confronted with the unfamiliar. It reframed the problem until it fit something old. The Speaker of the Ring spoke carefully, each word chosen to cool rather than inflame. The Havenfall incident constitutes an unauthorized but limited Terran intervention. Hostile actors were neutralized without loss of life. This council recognizes the outcome as acceptable. Acceptable. Mara Vance felt the word settle in her chest like ice. The Vayari consul folded her hands. Let us be clear. Humanity has demonstrated capability, yes, but also volatility. Independent military action cannot become a precedent. Mara finally smiled. It was small. Exhausted. You're right, she said. It can't. The Gorith warlord snorted. Then recall your vessel. Submit Quietus for inspection. Prove your intentions remain cooperative. Around the ring, several delegates nodded. A few looked uneasy, but none spoke. Mara understood the strategy instantly. They were trying to reassert control. Quietus wasn't the threat. The idea of Quietus was, if they could cage it, examine it, file it away under Accord authority, then the universe could go back to believing humanity was manageable. Mara clasped her hands behind her back. No, she said. The single syllable echoed louder than any speech she had given in that chamber. The speaker's light brightened. Ambassador Vance, refusal places your species in violation. Stop, Mara said. The interruption shocked the chamber into silence. She raised her head, eyes steady, voice calm. You are misidentifying the moment, she said. This is not a violation hearing. It's a reckoning. The Seln archivist's lattice flickered violently. Your tone implies threat. Mara shook her head. It implies history. She gestured subtly, and the council chamber's central projection activated. Not with human imagery, but with Accord records. Timelines unfolded. Routes closed. Petitions denied. Inspections delayed. Colonies isolated. Warnings ignored. Every decision logged. Every vote was recorded. This, Mara said, is what patience looks like over time. The Vayari consul stiffened. You are weaponizing bureaucracy. Mara's smile didn't reach her eyes. You taught us how. On the UNS Quietus, Commander Tamsin Holt stood perfectly still as the feed from Kestrel Spire played across the bridge. Her crew watched in silence. They all knew what came next. Commander, the navigator said quietly, multiple Accord fleets are repositioning. Not toward us. Holt frowned. Then where? The tactical display shifted. Red markers bloomed. Not around Quietus, not around Havenfall, but across human-adjacent systems. Supply hubs. Transit stations. Colonies with mixed populations. A pattern. They're dispersing, the tactical officer said, applying pressure everywhere at once. Holt exhaled through her nose. So that's their answer. She tapped her console. Relay to Fleet Command. The Council isn't escalating openly. What are they doing? The comms officer asked. Holt's eyes hardened. They're outsourcing cruelty. The first report came from Elyra Station. A cargo inspection gone wrong. Human dock workers detained. A scuffle. Shots fired. 3 dead. The second came from New Carthage. Power rationing imposed without notice. Hospital grids went dark for 17 minutes. 200 casualties. Then Sagan's Reach. A mixed-species colony where Accord peacekeepers lost control during a protest. No official numbers yet. Just silence. On Earth, Admiral Rhea Calder watched the reports stack like bodies. No single incident justified retaliation. That was the point. They were slicing humanity thin enough that responding everywhere would look like aggression. Calder closed her eyes. Status of civilian sentiment, she asked. An aide swallowed. Anger is rising. But it's focused, not chaotic. Calder nodded. They're waiting. For what? The aide asked. Calder opened her eyes. For permission. On Kestrel Spire, Mara Vance listened as another report filtered into the chamber. Filtered, softened, stripped of blood. The speaker summarized it blandly. Local security incident. Under review. Mara felt something inside her finally reach its limit. Not snap. Just stop bending. She stepped forward on the narrow human dais. You are testing us, she said. Carefully. Cleverly. You believe that if you never commit a single, obvious atrocity, we will never be justified in responding. The Gorath warlord leaned forward. And are we wrong? Mara looked directly at him. Yes. The word landed like a verdict. She raised her wrist and projected a single image into the center of the chamber. A human child on New Carthage, lying on a hospital bed. Machines are dark. Doctors are powerless. No gore. No theatrics. Just absence. This is not escalation, Mara said quietly. This is suffocation. The chamber was utterly silent now. Even the Vayari consul looked away. You misunderstand something fundamental about humans, Mara continued. We do not need permission to protect our own. We only wait because we hope you will choose not to force us. The speaker's voice trembled, just slightly. Ambassador, what are you saying? Mara inhaled once. Deep. Measured. I am saying, she replied, that if one more human dies because you chose procedure over compassion. She let the sentence hang. Not as a threat. As a boundary. On the quietus, alarms chimed softly. Commander, the AI reported. Probability analysis updated. Coordinated casualty threshold approaching. Holt didn't respond immediately. She opened a secure channel. One that bypassed the council, bypassed fleet command, bypassed everything except one destination. Admiral Calder, Holt said. Calder's image appeared almost instantly. I know. They're dancing around the line, Holt said. But they're close. Calder nodded. Closer than they realize. A pause. Then Holt asked the question no one else would. If they cross it, do we still stop short? Calder studied Holt's face. No, she said quietly. We stop pretending. Holt felt a chill that had nothing to do with fear. Understood. The crossing came 12 minutes later. At Sagan's Reach. An Accord peacekeeping detachment opened fire into a crowd after a power failure triggered panic. The official report would later cite miscommunication. The raw feed told the truth. Humans falling. Non-humans screaming. Weapons discharging without restraint. 37 dead. 17 humans. That was enough. On Earth, every clock tied to the Union command is synchronized. Admiral Calder stood. Initiate phase boundary, she said. No shouting. No drama. Just motion. Across human space, systems woke up that had never appeared on any registry. Defense networks reconfigured. Not outward, but inward. Sealing human worlds into something cohesive. Human fleets did not surge forward. They withdrew. Trade routes closed. Gates shut. Access revoked. The galaxy blinked and realized humanity had just turned itself into a fortress. On Kestrel Spire, panic finally erupted. What is happening? The Vayari consul demanded. The speaker's light stuttered. Terran systems are isolating. They are refusing all non-human traffic. The Gorath warlord stood, claws flexing. They're preparing for war. Mara shook her head. No, she said. We're preparing for responsibility. She raised her wrist again. This time, she did not project images. She projected a statement. One message. Broadcast everywhere. No flourish. No music. No flags. Just words. This is the Terran Union. We warned you where the line was. You crossed it. Effective immediately, humanity will enforce humanitarian protection independently of Accord approval. Interference will be treated as hostile. The chamber erupted. The speaker shouted over the chaos. You are declaring secession. Mara met its gaze. No, she said. We are declaring adulthood. At Sagan's Reach, the air shimmered. Human vessels appeared. Not one, not a fleet, but many, each positioned with surgical precision. They did not fire on peacekeepers. They removed them. Weapons disabled. Armor peeled open. Command structures shut down. No executions. No vengeance. Just an undeniable statement. You do not touch civilians anymore. Commander Holt watched the feeds from Quietus, jaw set. This is it, one of her officers whispered. Holt nodded. Yes. Are we the villains now? The officer asked. Holt didn't answer right away. She watched human ships form protective shells around stations that had begged for help for years. She watched violence stop. Not because someone won, but because someone refused to allow it. No, Holt said finally. But we're no longer harmless. Back on Kestrel Spire, the council sat in stunned silence. The galaxy had not burned. Humanity had not conquered. Instead, something far more destabilizing had happened. The Accord no longer mattered. Mara Vance looked around the ring one last time. You mistook patience for submission, she said. That was your error. She turned away. Behind her, ancient powers realized the truth too late. Humanity has reached its breaking point. And instead of rage, it had chosen control. Human space went quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of retreat, but the kind that follows a door locking from the inside. Across thousands of systems, Accord transponders blinked red as access requests failed. Trade lanes that had existed for centuries returned error codes. Jump gates responded with polite refusals, then stopped responding at all. Humanity did not announce a blockade. It simply stopped participating. For the first time since the Accord's founding, the galaxy felt what it was like to lose humans. On Kestrel Spire, the council chamber had become something unrecognizable. No ceremonial lighting, no ambient calm, just urgency layered on fear. Delegates spoke over one another. Data feeds scrolled faster than translators could keep up. The speaker of the ring pulsed erratically, its composite intelligence struggling to maintain authority over a body that no longer believed it had any. They've shut down 5 transit nexuses, a delegate cried. Our border worlds are reporting shortages already. They're engineers. Where are the human engineers? Mara Vance stood silently on her platform, no longer at the edge. She hadn't moved. The galaxy had. The Vayari console rounded on her. Composure finally cracked. You are destabilizing the entire Accord. Mara's voice was calm, but there was no softness left in it. No. We revealed how dependent you were. The console's eyes flashed. You think this gives you moral authority? Mara met her gaze without flinching. I think it proves we already had it. The Seln Archivist's lattice dimmed, its light patterns slow and uncertain, something close to shock. The Terrans are not exerting dominance, it said. They are withdrawing consent. Consent. The word rippled through the chamber like a fracture line. The Goroth warlord slammed his claws down. Then we will force them back. Mobilize. The speaker hesitated again. And in that hesitation, the galaxy felt something slip. Mobilize against whom? The speaker asked. Human fleets are not massing. Their borders are sealed. Any incursion would be invasion. The word hung there. No one wanted to be the first to say it. Because invasion meant justification. And justification meant humanity would stop holding back. In human space, the change was felt differently. Stations that had lived under constant inspection finally breathed. Colonies long strangled by tariffs saw supply lines rerouted overnight, human to human, efficient and quiet. At New Carthage, hospital grids stabilized under Union protection. Doctors worked without watching the clock in terror. At Sagan's Reach, children returned to open plazas guarded by ships that did not demand clearance codes written in alien law. People noticed something strange. Human warships did not patrol aggressively. They simply stayed. Present. Silent. Watching. Violence didn't escalate. It evaporated. Criminal syndicates vanished from human-adjacent systems. Not hunted, not annihilated, but starved of opportunity as access closed and movement froze. For the first time, humanity wasn't reacting. It was setting conditions. On the UNS Quietus, Commander Tamsin Holt watched reports roll in with a growing sense of unease. Not because things were getting worse, but because they were getting too stable. Commander, her AI said, predictive models indicate a 63% chance the Accord will attempt coercive reintegration within the next 2 cycles. Holt folded her arms. They don't know how to live without control. Agreed, the AI replied. However, analysis also indicates internal fractures. Several member species are petitioning for bilateral negotiations with the Terran Union. Holt's lips curved slightly. Separately. Yes. She shook her head. They're afraid to come together. She opened a secure channel. Fleet Command, This is quietus. Admiral Calder appeared almost immediately. She looked tired, but resolute. They're splintering, Holtz said. Trying to cut side deals. Calder nodded. Let them. That could undermine the accord completely. Calder's voice was steady. That's not our responsibility anymore. Holtz studied her. Is this really the end of patience? Calder considered. No, she said. This is what patience looks like after it's learned. The first delegation arrived 3 days later. Not announced. Not celebrated. A single Thalrex envoy requested entry at the edge of human space. No demands. No accusations. Just a question. Mara Vance received the request personally. She met the envoy aboard a neutral station. Human-built, minimalist, deliberately unadorned. The Thalrex representative folded its jointed limbs in a gesture of uncertainty. We misjudged you, it said plainly. Mara inclined her head. Yes. A pause. We believed restraint meant weakness. Mara's eyes softened, just slightly. You were not the first. The envoy's voice wavered. The accord is unraveling. Many of us relied on its authority to keep stronger powers in check. Mara leaned forward. And did it? The envoy did not answer. Mara let the silence work. We are not replacing the accord, she said finally. We are refusing to be contained by it. What do you want? The envoy asked. Mara smiled faintly. Nothing, she said. Except this. She slid a single document across the table. No treaty. No hierarchy. Just principles. Civilians are not leveraged. Aid is not negotiable. Power exists to prevent cruelty, not excuse it. The envoy read slowly. This has no enforcement mechanism, it said. Mara nodded. That's the point. The envoy looked up. Then why would anyone follow it? Mara's voice was quiet. Because you've seen what happens when we do. On Kestrel Spire, the council met in a reduced session. Several thrones were empty now. Some species had withdrawn. Others had quietly opened back-channel talks with humanity. The Speaker of the Ring spoke, voice strained. The Terran Union has destabilized galactic order. No one contradicted it. But no one agreed either. The Vayari consul sat rigid, her influence visibly diminished. They believed themselves guardians. The Seln archivist's lights flickered thoughtfully. Perhaps they always were. The Gorath warlord said nothing. He stared at a tactical projection that showed something deeply unsettling. Human borders were not expanding. They were holding. A wall, not a spear. You see, the archivist continued, conquest reshapes maps. This reshapes behavior. The speaker dimmed. For the first time, the council understood the depth of its mistake. Humanity had not broken. It had outgrown them. That night, Mara Vance stood alone by a viewport, watching the stars. Jalen Rode joined her quietly. They're scared, he said. Mara nodded. They should be. Do you think we went too far? Mara thought of Havenfall, of New Carthage, of Sagan's Reach. At the moment she had pressed send. No, she said. I think we waited too long. Jalen was silent for a moment. What happens now? Mara watched a human patrol ship drift past the window. No weapons charged, no aggression displayed. Now, she said. Now the galaxy learns something new. She turned from the stars. That patience is not infinite. And when it ends, it doesn't scream. It decides. Somewhere beyond the viewport, old powers recalculated. Some would adapt. Some would resist. But none would ever forget the truth now carved into galactic history. Humanity did not need to rule the stars. It only needed to make cruelty impossible wherever it stood. And that terrified everyone. Years later, the galaxy would argue about when the accord truly ended. Some historians marked the day humanity sealed its borders. Others chose the Havenfall intervention. A few insisted it was earlier, when the council laughed one too many times. They were all wrong. The accord didn't end in a moment of violence. It ended when fear stopped working. The Interstellar Ethics Symposium convened aboard a neutral relic station older than most civilizations attending. No banners. No thrones. Just circular seating and a view of open space, meant to discourage hierarchy. Humans had not been invited. They attended anyway. Not as rulers. Not as enforcers. As witnesses. Ambassador Mara Vance sat among delegates who once would not meet her eyes. Now they studied her carefully, as if patience itself might be contagious. A representative from a minor species, one that had nearly gone extinct during the Accord's stabilization campaigns, spoke first. We lived because human patrols stayed, it said. Not because they fought, because they refused to leave. Another delegate added quietly, our pirates vanished. Our children stopped hiding. The room grew heavy with something unfamiliar. Gratitude without submission. Fear without hatred. A Vayari scholar finally spoke, voice controlled but strained. Humanity claims it does not rule. Yet systems align their behavior around your presence. How is that different? Mara answered softly. Because we don't tell them what to do. Then why do they listen? Mara held the scholar's gaze. Because cruelty stopped working the moment we proved we could stop it, and chose not to profit from that power. Silence followed. Not resistance. Recognition. Elsewhere, the consequences unfolded more quietly. On former Accord worlds, old doctrines collapsed. Military academies rewrote curricula. The concept of acceptable civilian loss disappeared from strategic models, not out of morality, but because human response curves made it impractical. Where humanity stood, escalation became expensive. Where it did not, others began copying the rules. Aid corridors became untouchable. Relief fleets traveled unescorted and unharmed. Inspections became transparent, or they didn't happen at all. No human mandate enforced this. No fleet hovered overhead. The galaxy adjusted itself, because it had learned something fundamental. Power that does not seek control cannot be negotiated away. Commander Tamsin Holt stood on the observation deck of the UNS Quietus, now officially decommissioned. Not scrapped. Retired. Her ship had become something else. An idea more than a weapon. Have you ever missed it? A junior officer asked, watching the stars beyond the glass. Holt considered. No, she said. Because we didn't win anything. The officer frowned. We saved a lot of people. Yes, Holt agreed. But that's not victory. That's my responsibility. The Quietus would never fly again. It didn't need to. Its shadow was enough. On Earth, Admiral Rhea Calder addressed a new generation of officers. She did not show battle footage. She showed timelines. Graphs of escalation avoided. Casualties prevented. Wars that never happened. Remember this, she said. The universe will always test your patience. Not because it hates you, but because it doesn't believe you have limits. A cadet raised a hand. What if they test us again? Calder smiled faintly. Then they already know the answer. Mara Vance returned once more to Kestrel Spire. The station was quieter now. Smaller. Several wings were abandoned. The council ring still existed, but it no longer commanded. She stood where her narrow platform once had been. It was gone. In its place was a circle. Equal height. Equal distance. No throne at the center. Jalen Rode joined her. Older now, lines etched by years that mattered. Strange seeing it like this, he said. Mara nodded. Strange believing it would last forever. Jalen hesitated. Do you think they'll ever forgive us? Mara looked out at the stars. The same stars that once watched humanity beg, endure, and wait. No, she said gently. But forgiveness was never the goal. What was it? Mara's answer was quiet. Memory. Because across the galaxy, in classrooms and war rooms alike, one moment was taught with unusual care. Not the first shot. Not the strongest weapon. Not the battle that ended everything. But the moment a patient species finally said, enough. And instead of rage, it chose consequence. Instead of domination, it chose restraint. Instead of ruling the galaxy, it made cruelty too costly to attempt. No species ever forgot that moment. Because the most terrifying thing the universe had ever witnessed was not humanity at war, but humanity decided it would never wait quietly again.